Good morning, afternoon, and evening, everyone. I am your wonderful hostess, Violet the Dungeon Doctor, and I am honored to meet your acquaintance. Before we get into the wonderful stories we have here today, I would like to chat a bit about myself. I'm what's called a walker in my world, someone who can travel between dimensions. Because of this, I've collected quite the repertoire of friends, foes, and stories alike. So, like the wonderful and mighty bards of Crit Crab and Den of the Drake fame, I decided to share these tales with you, even if most aren't the most inspiring. Nevertheless, if you take a seat, I'd be happy to tell you of this story and many, many more. Now, our first story involves a short yet important lesson: communication. And specifically, communicating when something is wrong, especially dealing with lone wolf archetypes. Let's get into the story. I've been in a campaign for about a year now, and it's gone great so far. However, to make a long story short, one of our player characters died and was basically reincarnated with a different personality, despite being the same guy physically. We all liked the original character, but the new version of him loves to go against the party. He steals the loot, is generally unhelpful, and now he's quote-unquote secretly working with a cult we're fighting. All of this happened off-screen, and we as players know, but our characters just have suspicions. I feel like it doesn't make any sense for our characters, who are all do-gooders. But there's not even really a way for us to react when he antagonizes us because our DM doesn't allow for PvP. If we catch him doing something bad, all we can do is tell him to knock it off, basically. Even when he is behaving, he still wants to do his own thing. When we enter new locations, he always insists on going off on his own, while everyone else stays together, making the DM do multiple scenes where we just listen to his independent adventure for like half an hour. The hardest part is that the player seems to be having more fun with this new personality too. I think he enjoyed his character before the reincarnation, but he seems much more engaged than he was before. I mean, we don't want to kick him out because we're all friends, but it feels like a tough situation. Now, I want to focus on the first sentence of the final paragraph. The player seems to be having more fun with this new personality. It's important to remember that Dungeons & Dragons is a multiplayer game, one where each party member's opinion matters. If the party wants to go left in a dungeon, you wouldn't go right. If the party wants to play good aligned characters, you wouldn't play a chaotic evil character. If the party doesn't like your character, then you should meet with a compromise. The party will go right after exploring the left path. The character will have a redemption arc or be neutral instead of evil, etc, etc. What our OP needs to do is talk to the problem player and think of a compromise. Considering OP mentioned how the lone wolf is a good friend, they should be willing to talk it out. That being said, lone wolf isn't the only problem. The DM is at fault too. You'll often see in RPG horror stories that the DMs are, at the very least, complacent in the problem player's fuckery through inaction. Unless you're doing a solo session or a Tales of Ba Sing Se style session, you should never spend 30 minutes on a single player, nor you should let them be part of the villains without the party's express consent. Honestly, I do truly hope OP and Lone Wolf are able to talk things out. It's horrible when you have to kick out a player, and even more so when it's a good friend. But when said friend is ruining the game for everyone, and continue to do so after refusing to change, you need to cut them out. You deserve better. Going from bad to morally ambiguous, our next tale involves two players butting heads about a counterspell which saved their lives, but ruined the player's plan. Let's get to the tale. So, I've been playing D&D with a bunch of friends, or friends of friends, for a while, and our party is currently working for this local lord. Everything was going fine, and we were all having fun. Last session, we were rescuing a bunch of hostages from the bandit gang. The aim was to do it stealthily without battle. but the rogue got seen and it quickly became a fight. So now we have a battle in the middle of this camp with a bunch of NPC villagers trying to run away at the same time, which makes it a lot harder because we can't use AoEs. Alright, quick pause. I just want to applaud the DM. I'll be the first one to admit that combat in TTRPGs can be monotonous if done unwell. Something I admittedly still struggle with. Adding hazards can be the perfect way to spice up what would typically be a dice rolling simulator, and a better way to make your players think outside the box. Having to avoid hitting civilians is a perfect way to add said flair, avoiding spells like Fireball and making the spell slingers and rangers think before they shoot. So bravo, DM. Let's continue with the story. Which makes it a lot harder because we can't really use AoEs. It isn't going great, and eventually our sorcerer decides just to chug a fireball in, regardless of the fact that it will almost certainly kill most of the people we're trying to save. Fuck. To be fair, the character is true neutral, and it more or less tracks that he'd go with the easy option, even if it's not necessarily the right thing to do. His logic is, he thinks we're losing the fight, and that a dead party will not save anyone, whereas nuking the bad guy at least allows some of the hostages to escape. However, I decide that killing all of the hostages and pissing off our patron lord is a really bad idea. So I counterspell the fireball. I'm playing a chaotic good Arcfey warlock. This really pisses off the sorcerer player, but we keep going and eventually win the battle, and with only a few casualties, although we have to burn quite a few resources to do so. But after the session, we get into an argument, with about half the table taking each side. Sorcerer player reckons that you should never counterspell another player's action, as that's basically PvP, whereas I think it was an appropriate thing to do. To be clear, this is a no PvP table, where we have kicked out a guy who repeatedly tried to screw over other players. But I feel like this was the right thing to do for the party. So am I wrong here? The DM reckons what I did was fine, but a couple of the other players disagree. Now, this is a tricky situation. It absolutely sucks to get counterspelled as both a DM and a player. So unleashing a powerful attack and having it poof into non-existence could make things pretty heated. Either way, I have to agree with OP here. OP's character had their reason to counterspell it, with it being both in the party's and their own good. But I will give a small applause to Sorcerer. Perhaps it's just me being oblivious, but it seemed like his fuss wasn't all too hostile, especially considering the pair were friends. Bringing it up after game, making it known that he was uncomfortable with what he deemed as PvP, is a lot better than bottling up the emotions until it bursts. And trust me, we'll see our fair share of bursts later on in the channel. That being said, later on sadly has to wait. Because this is the end of the video, I would like to extend my deepest gratitude onto you for giving the Dungeon Doctor a chance, and I do truly hope to see you wonderful folks again soon. Good night, good luck, and goodbye.